Thank you for listening today on Revealing Wholeness, sponsored by Infinity Whole Health. Check out our website at infinitywholehealth.com, where we are revealing the eternal in each individual, the infinite in the individual. The creativity is made manifest. Limitation is let go. Now, here's your host, Dr. Troy Munson.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Troy Munson. One of the things that I find common in many of my clients is morning stiffness or joints that are stiff and tight and sore in the morning. And I've done podcasts on this before, but I'm gonna give a little flair here. For those of you that just have joint stiffness all the time, but especially in the morning, these are things that we're going to want to, or at least you want to take notes. So when we have joint stiffness in the morning, you are already on the road to arthritis. You probably already have some liver dysfunction going on as well. You probably have some heart conditions going on, if not already. And what we need to do is to begin to really help this system clean and detox. And so when we look at joint pain like arthritis, arthritics, I would say, are probably about 80% of the time they're constipated. And they are for a very good reason, because if you're arthritic, you have an excess amount of a chemical called guanidine. And guanidine is a natural body product from just normal everyday stuff that we do in our body. The cellular respiration, metabolism, all the things that our cells do, we just produce guanidine. One of the things that when we cut ourselves or we have cell damage that produces pain is guanidine, which goes across a nerve ending because it's very alkaline. It's one of the most alkaline substances in the human body. And because we produce this from just natural degradation from some of the food that we eat, but also from respiration or cellular processes, it can accumulate. And when it accumulates in the gut, it tends to back up in the liver and create more issues and more problems. And when that happens, we now have joint soreness, stiffness. We have a very sluggish liver. We're probably going to see it on a blood test as low liver enzymes. We may see it as other problems too, but the fix is really quite unique. And this is something that, we all like to learn something new if it's applicable to us. Some of this stuff is be like, I don't need to know any of this stuff. But I find it fascinating that they found an anti-stiffness factor. And where they found it is when slaves were on a plantation, especially a sugar plantation, slaves knew that if they had arthritic pain, that they would drink fermented sugarcane juice. And you think, fermented sugarcane juice? Well, that sounds an awful lot like beer. I wouldn't mind some of that. And while that is a possibility, it is not beer. And so fermented sugarcane juice, what it does is this denaturing process or this fermenting process of the sugar, we can actually remove the alcohol. And then what you're left over with is all the whole nutrients, the minerals, the vitamins that are left in that sugarcane juice minus the sugar. And we put that in a pill and we give that to people because there's what we call anti-stiffness factors. We don't even actually know I shouldn't say we don't actually know what their chemical makeup is, but we don't call them something like vitamin B. Though they are anti-stiffness factors, we could call them vitamin S or vitamin AS for anti-stiffness. And we'd eventually kind of put this in our mind, and it would just be like this thing that we'd lump together with other vitamins. Oh yeah, that's vitamin AS. That's the anti-stiffness vitamin. And while we don't do that, there's this gal, Dr. Wolzen, who discovered these anti-stiffness factors. And of course, they named them after her in honor, these Wolzen factors. And so these Wolzen factors are very good at helping denature things like guanidine. And in the beginning, we have to be very careful in taking the products that have it in it, because there's a couple products that I use, but I tell folks that, look, you may not be able to handle a full one. You may have to open up the capsule and dump half out, put it back together, and go ahead and just take a half a capsule. We might do that morning and night for 3 or 4 or 5 days until we can work up to a whole one. Because what we'd like to do is to make sure that the bowels are moving. So we might do some things to help promote gallbladder injection into the bowel of bile salts. So we could do purified bowel salts and try to help the bowel start to move. And then we can add these anti-stiffness factors and begin to detox the liver of all these components and start pushing it into the bowel and get the bowel to start moving regularly, so that all of a sudden now we can detox this whole body of these stiffness factors and get these anti-stiffness factors in there and start pulling out all this guanidine and all these stiffness factors and these particulate that are resting in our joints from really just natural body processes that are building up. Instead of the liver detoxifying, they're just accumulating. And now we're going to produce little nodules on joints if we don't detox. And now we're going to have what we call osteoarthritis. So this is the mechanism of how we begin to work this way. So what can we do? How do we begin to have a diet that may be more supportive of this constant detoxification? And I've said it over and over and over, but we want a clean diet. We want a diet that doesn't have a lot of empty calorie carbohydrates. We want a diet that doesn't have proteins that are killed, but we do need enough protein that is at least somewhat cooked that we can digest them. And if we don't feel like our digestion is very good, then we do need to do things like digestive aids, like a raw apple cider vinegar, like enzymes, like, whatever it is that you use that is helpful to basically digest your food better. The more live food you eat, the more fruits and vegetables that are picked fresh, they'll have enzyme activity that is quite high that helps us digest. As we stop eating sugar and white flour and white rice and carbohydrates, we actually de-stress or unburden the pancreas, which is supposed to produce most of our enzymes to help digest. As we begin to eat better foods, we de-stress the body, we lose weight, and now our pituitary, our thyroid, our adrenals, our testes for men, ovaries for women, those organ systems or those glands begin to produce more enzymes, because that's what they do too. They kick enzymes out in the blood, and they're not activated until they get to the stomach. And so we have all these helper organs that are there to try to help us digest, but our food should have been alive from the beginning. We shouldn't be cooking meat so much that it's wrecked and destroyed. It should be a bit more rare. If your digestion is strong enough and potent enough to handle it, the rarer, the better. If it's not, then you're going to want to make sure that you cook it to make sure that everything's killed, because your digestive system can't take care of itself yet. So these, again, are ideas for the average person to take hold of and begin to start realizing, how do I care for this body? It didn't come with a manual, but it's not really difficult if I'm abiding by some just general principles of whole raw food in its most prestigious or pristine state, rather. So that's how we're going to be working things. So if you have these joints that are massively stiff and you're going through this process and you would like a bit more help, like it's not going as well as you feel like it should or could, please reach out to me. Throw me a line, throw me an email. Let's get you on the right path and speed it up to breakneck speed if possible. So until next time, I hope this is helpful. I'm Dr. Troy Munson.
Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, you can reach Dr. Munson at 360-893-8586 or email him at chiroman@dr.com. That's chiroman@dr.com. Check out our current workshop schedule on Facebook at Infinity Whole Health.
The information on this podcast from Dr. Troy Munson is meant to educate the listener on a variety of health issues. It is not meant to diagnose or treat any conditions.